All right, we're going to talk about Dylan Marley Thomas. So, Dylan Thomas was born October 27th, 1914, in Swansea, South Wales. And he's killed by pneumonia, even though everybody was like, oh, he's going to die a drunkard. He's going to die from his heavy drinking, and he's going to pass away in his sleep. However, due to some mistakes of his operating physician, he got pneumonia and died. He was buried in St. Martin's Church in Lorraine, in the United Kingdom. I'm probably not saying that correctly. Um, It'd be like that. His father, Dave John, was an English teacher and wanted to be a poet, but he wasn't that good. And Dylan Thomas inherited his intellectual and literary abilities, perhaps even more so than David John. His mother, Florence, was a pretty simple and normal and religious woman. And from her, Thomas inherited his mood, temperament, respect for Celtic heritage. Um, that's about all. He had an older sister named Nancy, and he attended grammar school where he got a formal education. So that's why he's able to write well. As a student, he had contributions to the school magazine, and he was keenly interested in local folklore, so stories that were passed down within that specific culture that he grew up in. He said that as a boy, he was small and thin and indecisively active, and he was quick to get dirty, and his curly behavior was disastrous. During his early school years, he befriended Daniel Jones, another local schoolboy, and they would write hundreds of poems together. And as an adult, Daniel Jones would later on edit a collection of Thomas's poetry. Um, he was actually a really average kid, like academically speaking. His test scores were not great, and he shied away from doing his classwork, so he didn't get good grades. And he was kind of avoidant of his classmates before he went to the Bishop Gore Institution, which was a secondary institution in England. Well, no, it was an English secondary institution in Wales, and that was founded in the 17th century by Hugh Gore, Bishop of Waterford and Lismore. As he grew up, as I mentioned before, he was an alcoholic. He drank a lot, and he had a famous quote that said, "An alcoholic is someone who you don't like, who drinks as much as you do." Which is basically to say, everybody's an alcoholic. It's just if you consider them a drunk, then they're an alcoholic, not you, because you're not an alcoholic. But in fact, he was. He was an alcoholic. Then another quote from him is that poetry is not the most important thing in life. I'd much rather lie in a hot bath reading Agatha Christie and sucking sweets than reading poetry. Which is kind of funny, kind of ironic that he would be the one to say that. Um, but I digress. I'm going to read some of his poems. First, I'm going to read And Death Shall Have No Dominion. It's a short poem, and it's an example of how Thomas had immense skill, and he liked to focus on things that relate to death. So this one is about the avoidance and reproach of a coming end. So he was trying to separate himself from the idea of mortality. So he wanted to look at death and a coming end in his poetry. Um, However, in this particular one, he was trying to analyze the happenings of one facing their death and what it was like for someone to experience it. So I'll just get right into it. And death shall have no dominion. Dead men naked they shall be one, with the man in the wind and the west moon. When their bones are picked clean, and the clean bones gone, they shall have stars at elbow and foot. Though they go mad, they shall be sane. Though they sink through the sea, they shall rise again. Though lovers be lost, love shall not, and death shall have no dominion. And death shall have no dominion under the windings of the sea. They lying long shall not die windily. Twisting on racks when sinews give way, strapped to a wheel, yet they shall not break. Faith in their hands shall snap in two, and the unicorn's evils run them through. Split all ends up they shan't crack, and death shall have no dominion. And death shall have no dominion, no more may gulls cry at their ears, or waves break loud on the seashores. Where blew a flower, may a flower no more. So, that is, and death shall have no dominion. Now I will get into my very, very favorite poem of all time, of any poet. It is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, once again by Dylan Thomas. So, I will read it. Now, the voice that I'm doing is a little bit of my own little bit of Dylan Thomas. There's a recording of him speaking, and I kind of get that waver in my speech whenever I read his poems. So, I'm not trying to make fun of a British or Welsh accent. I'm imitating the great. I'm imitating the person who actually made this poem. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying, how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding light. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Now, what the hell was that about? What was he saying there? What was he trying to get across? Well, from what I can tell, paraphrasing that whole thing, getting the gist of it, he's trying to say, don't go into this darkness, don't die, for you should enjoy your old age. Like, you're old, you got there, you're retired. Be happy. Fight against the coming death. Don't give in. Don't just die. Don't croak. Don't do it. You've lived a long life. You have plenty to share with people. You have more to live for. And even though wise men know that, hey, I'm old, I'm broken, I can't live like this for much longer, that they still have so much to do. So don't succumb to death. Don't give in. All types of men deal with aging and the idea that death is coming for them. And you need to overcome that. Just push through it. Push through the idea that you are going to die. Get over it. Everyone is going to die. No one is immortal. So just accept that at one point you will die, but it doesn't have to be right now. Therefore, Father, because at one point he's addressing his dad, seeing you in this old, decrepit state isn't what I want for you. Don't give up. Live. And that's what I would say it's about. It's a really dramatic poem. So the narrator, Dylan Thomas, is going through it. Not only that, but the person that he is talking to is going through it. Likely an upcoming death, specifically of his elderly father. He's telling the older man that you should fight, struggle, attempt to escape the grip of death that's coming for you, and run rather than fall into its clutches. The poet does not say focus on a single location or setting, instead focusing on imaginary situations and locations. And he speaks of attempts of his father to do better things than being on the verge of nothingness. So whatever, you might be laying in bed, but think of all the greatness. A sunset, a bolt of lightning, a green bay extending out from the seashore, a shooting star blazing across the sky, and finally, the top of a mountain. These amazing, wondrous, brilliant things that you could experience in life, but not in death. These are all examples and come from the way that he depicts and describes stages or parts of life, death, the struggle of staying sentient, keeping your mind and body here in this world rather than moving on. He metaphorically transitions through the depths of a particular ocean, the green bay, the tallest peak of the mountain, and the sad heights. The whole time the reader's being given these images throughout nature and saying, "Don't go, Dad." He's sitting by his father's bedside and telling him of these things, these wondrous, the green bay. You could be seeing this again. You could go and look at the sky. You can't fall into depression. You can't just accept that you're going to die without having done anything. You lived this great life and you're still alive, but you've given up. Don't. So it's not exactly clear if the speaker in the poem is exactly Dylan Thomas, but it is definitely someone who is worried about his father's declining health. Dylan Thomas sat idly by, worrying about his dad, too afraid to make David, his father, known that he was worrying about him. The man in the poem, however, is saying what Dylan Thomas would have said were he able to go back to his dead father's bedside and talk to him. So Dylan Thomas, this is him writing what he wishes he would have been able to say. Dad, fight. Dad, I know you're dying. I know it's hard. I know you're sick. But please, I don't want you to die. Live. There's more out there for you to experience and do, and we could do it together. Just please don't die. And the speaker in this poem, as opposed to the last one, is facing death, but not the death of himself. Whereas in Death Shall Have No Dominion, it is looking at death and being like, no, I don't want to die. but like I won't really even know about it once I'm dead. But in Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night, it is looking at the death of someone else. So rather than being worried about the mortality and the life of oneself, it is looking at that for another person, specifically his father. Um, and I feel like that's really important for a lot of people to go through, because not only are you worried about yourself, but you're extraneously thinking of others. Like you are emotionally connected to a bunch of different people, but dealing with the thought of them dying and being gone from this world permanently, that you will never see them again, that they will never be able to experience the sky, the sun, the moon, the stars, the ocean, the bay, the mountains. It's heart-wrenching because they're just laying there in a bed, dying. Now, the speaker in the poem has this mixed attitude on the subject matter, which is death. And he's both seeing this saddened defeat, but also holding this rebellious spirit to fight, go against fate, avoid death, face death, in an attempt to live. He wants the person to have an extra second past beyond their fated time. He believes that if he had been there for his father, spoken up like this person had in this poem, then maybe his father would have fought and not gone gentle into that good night. So some themes and conflicts in the poem are old age, an insufficient amount of time with loved ones, a lack of life in one's own lifetime, lacking the ability to live how you want, go see all of the things, do everything. The fear of missing out, the you only live once idea, the you only get one chance to do this thing and you're blowing it. And once you're dying, once you're in bed, once you're disabled, or once you're not able to go do those things, you can never live fully, and you'll just look back with all of these regrets. And also the idea that giving in to what's supposed to happen is what wise people realize is best. The idea that once you realize that we're all gonna die, why not just give in? But then it's also the why most people who accept death are just like, okay, I'm dying. But it's challenging that. It's saying, no, don't do that. Don't give in. Fight. The message that Thomas is conveying here is that his father and anyone on the brink of the end should look forward instead of looking to the past of like, all right, I had a good life, I had a good run, what did I do? No, he's saying no. Don't give in. Do not. It's cowardly to accept what is supposed to happen to you. Death is not coming for you. Keep going. Turn your back, fight tooth and nail, and try, feebly crawl away, escape, live another day, go and see these amazing things. Now, Thomas uses emphatic diction, brilliant word choices. He includes metaphors and imagery nearly to an overwhelming extent that you don't even get it the first couple times that you hear this poem. Because of the repetition and reiteration, you're just like, oh, he's saying the same shit. Same shit. Same shit. No. Take a breath. Read it again. Listen to it again. Most of the metaphors that he uses are related to nature, like, because their words had forked no lightning they, and good men the last wave by, crying how bright, and their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. These references to nature add to the main points about death and how Thomas is coming across from all different kinds of like things about life, and how life itself can only come from the end of nature's own span. Think of that. You can only think of all the things you wish you did after you had the chance to do them. After you had the chance, you lost the chance, now it's done, is when you can really be retrospective, look back and be like, there's so much that I could have done differently. But it's at that point that he's saying, this is your call to action. Go and keep living. Keep living. Keep doing the things. Keep experiencing life. Don't give in. Don't die. Live. Rather than life in his actual word choice, he chooses to use light or day. And instead of death, he uses night and darkness. The reason that these words were used in place of the easier and more obvious words in particularly would be Dylan Thomas's avoidance of using some particular phrases. The speaker, who Thomas wanted to be, doesn't want to imagine his father passing away. He does not want to explicitly say death. He does not want to put a label to the end. He does not want to imagine the real end. Death, the concept, even though he's addressing it and trying to avoid it, he doesn't want to talk about it because of how powerful, significant, and hurtful it is. But he doesn't want to say life either, because he doesn't want to just say stay alive, because that doesn't have enough punch. So instead he goes for he goes into words about the emptiness and void, which nothing inhabits, but everything is called to. This death, this nothing, this after. Do not go gentle into that good night. That good night, that emptiness, that void, that after. It's softer, it's subtler, it's avoiding the grimness, it's separating death from death. It's making it like a good night. It's making it going to sleep. It's gentle and easy and not something to be worried about. But he still wants to avoid it. He uses this poem to speak on the richness of nature. No, actually, he doesn't. He, not quite the richness of nature, and it's not quite of living one's life. He wrote it about a man who was afraid of his father not fleeing from nature, from the end of life. He is connotative. He uses connotative and abstract words rather than truthful and plain statements of what was or what is. And he gave raw and emotional, but very picturesque and painted imagery of what he was thinking, going through, and trying to impart on the minds of those reading this poem. So instead of saying what he meant, instead of saying it in a blunt and upfront manner, instead of being completely honest with himself, he's doing it in this very flowery and overcomplicated way to make it easier for himself, but also to get more emotional and open about what he was feeling and what he wanted. Many of Thomas's words are advanced and polysyllabic, However, he utilizes and wonderfully implements monosyllabic points to emphasize and better depict what is going on. He speaks with this kind of negative outlook in a hopes of a positive outcome. But he comes off as pessimistic, but speaking as if he doesn't quite believe in the end, as if he's not really truthful. In the poem, he uses informal terms, and while writing as this speaker, trying to convince the father, he's like, I know we're all gonna die. I know that wise men just accept that we're gonna die. But don't do it. Don't give in. Overall, it's a lot of words and phrases meant to calm and convince the listener to fight against death in a peaceful manner. The dying of the light gives a perfectly clear image of what is going to happen. It's what you will see when death does indeed eventually come for you, and how it lacks any or all things. The first part of this poem is all of these brilliant visuals. It's paintings of scenes of beauty and gorgeous nature. But then as he goes on, it's the last wave by. How bright. Frail deeds danced in a green bay. Which is completely different than the reaper coming for you. Throughout the poem, he's giving visuals, giving imagery, because this has to take place in the mind. He's putting these thoughts and images in the head of the reader. Because in this case, the father, the person who he's trying to convince not to die, can't get up. He can't go and see those things. So he has to be vibrant and use imagery and implant this piece of graphic, explicit detail and expertly use examples and descriptions of the places to make it feel real. Now, these beautiful aspects of the world might be physical places that he's visited. It might not. But I can guarantee this. The dead can never go and see what he's talking about. By inserting these little stories, this built up worlds that he's talking about, that he wants his father to go see, you can't do that in the afterlife. You could never find the happiness or joy of experiencing these beautiful visions of scenery and nature once you're dead. And he's talking about the happiness that the world can bring you as long as you're still in it. But he doesn't give any depiction of death itself. He doesn't talk about what he believes the afterlife will be or what reaper might come to take your soul. He doesn't say, oh, you're going to live in heaven or hell. He doesn't talk about that. He doesn't talk about anything after. He doesn't talk about death. He doesn't talk about the name of the one dying. Just talks about how after they give in, after they go to sleep, there's just null. There's nothing. Emptiness, void. And it's incredibly ambiguous, partially because he wants it to be open to the audience's own interpretations of what comes after life. he has a severity and cold attachment to reality. And that is chillingly realistic to whoever listens to and reads his poetry. I mean, throughout all of his poems, he discusses death because obviously we're human and we flee from death. Voldemort, pardon me. Flight from death. Um, he's his word choice is ornate and clever and unique, and he frames this story to shape it like a tale. And it's really unique. It's beautiful writing. It's so much compressed down into one little poem. And, of course, he is one of the most influential poets of the modern period. And in this poem, he uses enjambment in about half the lines, and as a means to increase tension and move the story forward. He uses figurative language. That's like a fifth of the lines. Um, and when he wrote, "Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay." In these particular lines, enjambment creates the drama. It allows the poet to play with the words, moving away from the predetermined meanings of, like, grave men near death with blinding sight. They know what's coming for them, but then be like, blind eyes could blaze. You could see meteors and be gay and happy. You could stop looking ahead. Stop looking at your coming death. Stop feeling like your whole world is ruined because you're disabled, you're bedridden. Stop it. I know you think you're going to die, but you're not. You're going to keep living, keep seeing stars. You're going to keep going out and climbing mountaintops and exploring the world and being here in the real world and not dying. The blinding sight is some kind of vision, memory, future, and he's asking the person who's dying, the speaker, to don't look back at your mistakes or triumphs. Don't think of what you've done in the past. Don't ruminate on that. There might be a clarity that, sure, the end is near, but it is also true that if you do not die, you have a chance to experience great wonders again. Now, these sentences are a little choppy, and it, to me, adds some charm. I like it. Um, it's a bit exotic in the way that it's phrased, and it's leaving an emotional impression of, it's almost exerting reading "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." It's hard. It's not flowy. It's not natural. It makes you feel nearly defeated, but also hopeful and tired because it feels like you're trying, begging someone to not die and thinking about the coming passing of a family member. It's written in iambic pentameter with two rhymes and two refrains with like A B A B A B A B A B A A B A B A B A B, what have you, A B A A, whatever. I'm not great at poem structure, but what he's talking about is a punch in the gut to any child or person to sit beside a loved one and watching them deteriorate. watching them fall into this mentality of, well, death should just hurry up and take me because I'm living a crappy life. I'm not happy. I'm just sitting here and my existence is futile. Nothing that I can do, nothing that I can experience here in life will be better than the end. But the speaker is contesting that belief. The person who's next to them, sitting next to the bedside, begging for them to live, says there are things that are worth living for. Don't die. Don't you give up on me, because I'm not giving up on you. And it is terribly sad to me that Thomas wrote this after his father was dead, after he had missed the chance. Looking back, wishing that he had said these things, wishing that he had been the speaker to beg their father not to go. Do not go gentle into that good night. Don't let death take you. Stay here for yourself. Stay here for me. Keep living. And with that, I think I've said my piece. I hope you like my poetry analysis, and I hope you have a great day and a happy weekend. It's Friday. So with that, I'll bid you adieu.